name is Noel Glynn, and I've been involved with the 9/11 Truth Movement generally since about 2004. And sitting next to me is Paul Warburton, who is a barrister who works with refugees, and he has been conducting a campaign of letter writing and complaining about BBC bias over the past couple of years, haven't you? And I'll ask Paul now to explain what he's been doing.
Right. Thanks, Noel.
I don't know, is that one working?
Yeah.
Both.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I got 5 minutes last time at the October conference, so I thank Noel for the extra 15 minutes here to see whether it's better. I think one of the reasons why you're finding today difficult is because you're not really the 99%. You're probably not even a fraction of 1%, but you are a very, very valuable fraction of society who activate and pressure and read and ask difficult questions. And that observation was made years ago by a guy called Frank Serpico from New York City, and he said something like this: there was about 5% of bad guys and 5% of good guys, and the 90% of people in the middle wish they could be like you. So thank you to yourselves for just simply being here today and for all the work that you've done in the past. I don't know what you have done, but you obviously are very, very concerned about this stuff, and whatever you do, it's something really special. And I couldn't do Occupy, like I was a day visitor to Occupy, but I couldn't do the tent stuff. I've kind of gone past that a little bit with my age now, but people who do that kind of stuff, whatever you do, whatever it is, whatever noises you make, it's really, really good, because it's not 99% of people making those noises. It's less than 1%, and this is why it's so difficult here. It's if we had people behind us who were doing their jobs properly, we wouldn't be here today. And I'm really sorry about that, but that's why it's difficult. We're up against an elite that's very, very smooth-oiled in its machinery, and we've got all of our friends, and I've spoken to my friends about this over the years, and they concede the point. I'm one of these people that say that 9/11 was an inside job. There's no doubt about that. And I say to my friends, just read this, just look at this, and they come back to me, and most of them say yes, and they leave it. That's where they leave it. They don't want to take this. They don't want to take this another step further. And I say, what you're looking at here is the end of your civilization. If you don't see what these people have done on that day, you can kiss everything else goodbye. And it might be another 10 years before they do something else, but they're on a path now. And unless we get to these people, I'm not particularly into public executions, but they definitely, we can have a referendum about that, but they definitely need to be put inside, because what kind of world are we going to hand over to our children? They're walking into this as 15-year-olds, and they don't know what the hell's going to hit them. And we might get away with this, like we might get away with another 10 or 15 years, but the next generation, they will get this full on, and they won't know what the hell hit them. So thank you very much for being here today. That was impromptu, so now I've forgotten where I am.
Letter writing campaign.
Yes, I think so. Aren't you?
Yes. Yeah. How much longer have I got? Can you be my timekeeper?
Yeah, 10 minutes.
10 minutes. There's some very good people in this room who collect information, and I use that information. I'm not a researcher as such, I'm more of an activist. So when I find something, I'm thinking, okay, what can I do with this? And what I've tried to identify is the BBC as being a linchpin and a weak point in the opposition's armoury, because they are public. They're not private, they're public, and they're publicly funded, and they have this documentation that says that they're impartial, and they're accurate, and they're honest, and they're as pure as the driven snow. And if you complain to them, they're going to reply to you within 2 weeks with a complete full response. Well, I still haven't had a full response to my complaint from 7 or 8 months ago. And I think it's because they have seen that we have identified something crucial about their story, and it's a gaping hole. And for me, that's what I've identified as the weak link in their chain. I think it's going to be very, very difficult to get to Murdoch or to Fox or CBS or CNN. The BBC is in a very, very unique position. And I I've brought all the documentation along and I haven't got the time to read it all to you, but I just want to read you some key statements from these people. This is the first page of the 215-page editorial guidelines for the BBC, and this is from the chairman. The public expect the information they receive from the BBC to be authoritative, and the guidelines accordingly place great stress on standards of fairness, accuracy and impartiality. Without these, the key role of the BBC in supporting an informed democracy cannot be achieved. That's Sir Michael Lyons. Now that sounds very, very good, but it's not the case. And this is what you found over the last few months of the Occupy movement, that the people you expect in society to actually come out and stand by these supporters by saying, there is something fishy going on here, so we're going to join with these supporters, and we're going to start investigating this. The church, for example, they basically closed their doors on people. And this is what the BBC have done on this 9/11 issue. The editorial guidelines look good when you read them, and I've gone through all of them. It looks good. And then I came across another document, which was the agreement. I didn't know that there was an agreement between the BBC and the government, and it's called the agreement. And section 4 is the independence of the BBC. The parties to this agreement affirm their commitment to the independence of the BBC as stated in Article 6 of the Charter. By entering into this agreement, the BBC has voluntarily assumed obligations which restrict, to some extent, its future freedom of action. So this is the situation we've got now. I'm paying £3,664 million a year as a fee payer, along with you, to the BBC. That's their main source of funding. And you would think that they're independent as a result of that, but they're also receiving £293 million a year from the government by way of grant. And you're thinking, well, why do you need to have an agreement? Why do you need to have an agreement with the government if you're an independent organisation? That's something fishy. Anyway, further on in this document, I only found this out quite recently because I was preparing for this conference, but...
Is this on the net?
Yeah, I printed all this stuff out, yeah. News and current affairs. Oh no, that's not it.
Where would you find it on the net?
If you just type in the BBC agreement, it comes straight up. That's what I find funny about this stuff, like it's all in print, like they don't hide it. You're thinking, like, did you just say that? This is some general obligations of the BBC. Section 81, Defence and Emergency Arrangements. So the first document I read you was the editorial guidelines. Yeah, that sounds really, that's the kind of the Disney version, the soft version. And then this is the agreement between the Secretary of State and the BBC. Some general obligations of the BBC. Section 81, Defence and Emergency Arrangements. 1. Any government minister, A, may request that the BBC broadcast or otherwise distribute any announcement, and subsection 3. A request under paragraph 1 or 2 must be made in writing, and the BBC, A, must comply with the request. So that's not independent, is it? Like if you're saying to me that independence is like where you can do 99% of Jack and Ori, Blue Peter, Doctor Who, Grandstand, all the things that you associate with the BBC as it's really good stuff, like Dad's Army, that's great. But the 1% stuff, like how do you know, like you're sitting down with a cup of tea one day and you're hearing the news and something's been slipped into the news under this section, and you're thinking, oh, that's okay because the BBC is independent. We've already heard that they're not totally independent. And my concern with this campaign, and I'll wrap this up now, is this. This is the link I see, that when that Gladio stuff happened, and from my memory of it, they seemed to name the CIA. The CIA were the ultimate paymasters. The BBC ran a fantastic documentary called Time Watch, called Operation Gladio, Time Watch. Now, if you, the BBC, have run that argument, and you've shown this through many interviews with all these intelligence officers and ex-policemen and ex-judges, wall-to-wall interviews, you've established that fact. Why then, when I did a search of it on your own BBC website, it said, sorry, there are no results for your search? I'm thinking, hang on, there's a link here somewhere there. If the CIA did this stuff in Bologna, in the 80s, and when we're saying that they did something in 2001, we have a potential bridge there, we have a potential link that you should be looking into, certainly as journalists. And what I think's happened is that some orchestra, some conductor of some orchestra somewhere has handed out a song sheet to the media by saying, this is what you're going to say on the day. And I think the BBC were a part of that. So what I'm trying to get at with the trustees is I'm saying, look, you're saying this in the guidelines, but there also seems to be another story going on with some of this other documentation, and based on all the evidence that we've seen from all the BBC programmes, they are showing a very, very biased and partial story towards the official account, and it just can't stand up to scrutiny. Like it's not just one thing. We're looking at about 25 different items here that can be discreetly identified, and it's just stretching the imagination to say that we are an informed democracy because of the BBC. We're all being led astray here. So for my part, what I've been trying to do over the last few months, along with Noel and John, and with Adrian and Peter, is to persistently bombard the BBC with these very, very specific letters saying, when you say this, why are you not mentioning this other account, which is very, very important and which is truthful? We need to hear about that. And the beauty with the 4 parallel letter writing campaigns is that each of us are identifying different things. And we've now reached the stage now where the guy in the BBC who's dealing with it is the guy who deals with allegations of serious breaches of the editorial code. So they know that we're watching them and that we're on their tail. Now the problem is trying to get this up to the trust now and for them to do an investigation, which they can do, but I know that they're not going to want to look at this, because as soon as they start looking into it, they're going to have to start conceding ground. And as soon as you get a major media outlet conceding ground on 9/11, the flood starts to come through the dam, then it starts to crack away. That they cannot concede a point to us. But my position is I can't stop. Like, why should I stop? Like, I know this is a problem, and it's a fundamental problem, so I have to keep going with this. So what I'm hoping from today is that if there's, I won't put a number on it, but if there's some of you here who are good letter writers and who are very, very persistent, if you're like a dog with a bone, and we can kind of network on this, we can say, well, okay, let's start putting some more pressure on the trust on this issue.
Contact details.
Yep, yeah, sure. Great, thank you. So I just feel that we need to keep the pressure on the BBC over this because they put themselves in print. They're saying they're independent when it's manifestly obvious they're not independent.